and welcome to TAMAPTA. I'm Leonard Harry. In July of 1988, Debbie Gordon, Stan Rubin, and myself traveled by boat to the mouth of Mackenzie River to a place called Gupuk. The archaeological team was unearthing the remains of an Inuit settlement dating back hundreds of years. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Gukpak is an archaeological site situated 25 miles west of Tuktoyakta at the mouth of the Mackenzie River. Gukpak, which means big river, was probably occupied more than 800 years ago, but artifacts that were found suggest that it could have been at an earlier date. The Inuit culture dates back a few thousand years. In the last few years, archaeologists have begun digging up the old settlements of the Inuit people. Living off the land was the major role in that society, camping where subsistence was good and traveling as the seasons changed and as the animals moved. It was a way of life as primitive as the tools and implements they used. Finding these tools and implements took patience and hard work by archaeologists. They had dug up sod houses that over hundreds of years had caved into the ground. Here at Gukpak, they found artifacts and implements of the Inuit culture that dates back 700 to 800 years ago. Chuck Arnold is an archaeologist who was working at the Gukpak site.
Well, we hope that we're going to learn a lot about the people that lived here about 700 years ago. A large part of the archaeological site has been washed away by the river, and what's left might be washed away in the next 10 or 15 years, so we want to learn something about how the people lived before it all goes.
There are 4 other houses out here through the willows, and they're hard to distinguish, but you look for depressions in the ground. The depression and the mounding around the house, these houses were dug into the ground, and then sod was heaped up on the sides. And if we go up this way, we can walk through the house as they probably would have entered it. And you can see the depression in here, which is probably the entrance tunnel continuing up through here, with logs most likely going to be showing up around this area here on the side. Again, the entrance passage continues with these logs right over here forming an outside wall. And you have posts sticking up that were used to support the rows of horizontal logs. The area in the center is really deep, full of moss and humus still, because that's, again, the depression coming right up through the house, through the entrance tunnel, sorry. Again, on the sides, lots of fish bone and beluga bone. This part of the house represents one of the sleeping benches. The sleeping benches, usually in a house this size, you'd probably find 2 or 3. We found 1 so far, and it's represented by these series of parallel logs. And in front of that would be the living floor. Okay, by living floor, what we mean is a floor where people would have cooked and, chipped and made stone tools. And this log would have been tipped up on its end and supported some of the cross beams of the house. Again, everything in log. This square over here, for the fireplace, we have a series of rocks forming a circular pattern. All this earth in here has ash, which you can see a little bit in here. All this is ashy soil. Area is full of fish bone and, of course, whale bone. This area here represents a log floor that's emerging. Often they logged their floors. We're still following it. It'll probably run under this area over here. We use moss to cover up artifacts that are stuck in the house and we can't get them out because of permafrost or because they're under some structural logs. So we use the moss to keep the artifacts wet until we can get them free.
When human remains are found, they are buried again and other sites are found to excavate. Finding artifacts and studying them can help in learning how they lived, what they ate, and possibly how they made their clothing. Altogether, about 3,000 artifacts were found during the 2 times that they have worked at the site. At Gukpak, there were 13 people working, some of whom were trainees. Also, the elders were very helpful in identifying some names and uses of tools and implements. What have you found out so far from the elders telling you about the artifacts that you found?
Well, they've helped us identify a lot of the tools. See, the thing is that the people that used to live in this area died off mainly due to diseases at the end of the 1800s, and very little was ever written down about them and the tools that they used and what they did. So when we find things in the archaeological site, often we can't identify it. So talking to the elders and getting their ideas of how the things might have been used really does help us out a lot.
Is there any surprises that they've shown?
Oh, all sorts of surprises. Well, the artifact that Wallace was showing us a little while ago, the tube made out of a swan bone, we thought that might be used as a drinking tube, for instance, and he was showing us how, even when he was a younger fellow, people use those when they hunt the beluga whales. They stick the bone tube under the skin of the whale and blow it up, and it makes it easier to tow the whale to shore.
The archaeological Finding artifacts that are thousands of years old is a little more difficult around the Gukpak area. Chuck Arnold explains.
Well, in this area, the oldest that we found is about 700 or 800 years. We know that there have been people living in the Arctic for maybe 4,000 or 5,000 years, but we haven't found any of that real early material in this part of the Mackenzie River. Further out towards McKinley Bay, we find the older material, but I think in this area, for people to live in this area, they had to know how to hunt beluga whales and how to net fish, and those are really important food to the people today and probably 700 years ago. And we don't think the people 4,000 years ago, for instance, knew how to net fish, and maybe not how to hunt beluga whales. They might not have had kayaks back then.
And what was this place to the Inuvialuit people?
Did it work?
Well, Gupuk, according to the elders, means Mackenzie River, and Gupuk was the name of the village as well, and the people that lived here called themselves the Gupukmute, and they were one group of maybe 5 large groups of people that together made up the Inuvialuit back before the white people came to this part of the country.
How similar is this place? How similar is Gukpak to Kittigaki?
Well, it seems to be about the same size as Kitty. Probably both places had maybe 800 or 1,000 people living here at one time, maybe 200 or 300 years ago. The houses look quite a bit the same, but the artifacts look a little bit different, and that's something that we expected to find anyways, because even though they were all Inuvialuit, the Gupukmute were a little bit different. They considered themselves to be a different group of people from the Kittigaki.
Preserving artifacts had to be done as soon as they were found and dug out.
The reason why we're finding such nice artifacts is that they're frozen in the ground, and it's like they've been in a freezer for the last 700 years. But when we take them out of the ground, a couple of things are going to happen. They're going to change temperature right away, and they're going to begin drying out. And so we have to make sure that as soon as we find an artifact in the site, we begin treating it. As soon as it comes out of the ground, we wrap it in moss to keep it wet, and then we bring it over to our lab tent where our artifact conservator works on the artifacts.
This is the conservation lab, and I'm responsible for the treatment of the artifacts after they're excavated. Conservation is a very important part of an archaeological site. When artifacts are buried originally, they will deteriorate until they reach an equilibrium with their environment. So then they'll deteriorate to a certain extent, then they'll stop. Now, when artifacts are excavated by the archaeologists, they're exposed to a whole new set of conditions, and they will start to deteriorate again and try and reach an equilibrium with the new environment. So what I try to do is minimize the damage that can happen when the artifact is excavated. Basically, the conservation starts when the artifact is removed from the ground. The field workers will wrap it in moss to keep, if it's a wet artifact, they'll keep it in wet moss and keep it in a bag, in a polyethylene bag. If it's damp, they'll keep it with damp moss and wrapped again. And if it's dry, they'll keep it in dry moss. The moss acts as a support and sort of stops it from being banged, acts as a buffer also. Mm-hmm.
When she takes the artifact out of a bag, she gives it a number and notes it down in a folder. This is to help in future use.
This is an antler. It's a shank for a fish hook. So I, gently feel it, see if it's sound. Take a look and see if there are any areas that are lifting or flaking, if it's cracked or broken. And then I do a drawing on the card, which gives us information which is easier to see than to talk about. To write, a description would take a lot, whereas if you have a diagram, you can indicate where there are cracks or lifting areas. And they can be measured and just written on the card.
Information such as the dampness of the artifact, if it is soiled, and just a general description are noted. Measurements are also taken of depth, width, and length.
Being that it's very sound, I'm going to clean the surface, and I will start treating it. And basically all I have to do is dry it. Now, when you're drying something, if you want to keep it moist, the same amount of moisture through the whole piece, because if you don't, say if we just left this out in the sun, the surface would dry out more quickly than the interior, and then you get cracking and splitting. Like when you have wood outside, the core is sound, but the exterior surface will crack and flake off. So we're trying to avoid that, because if it starts cracking and flaking, you lose information and it basically destroys the piece. So,
with a brush, she cleans off most of the surface dirt and moistens the artifact. With a cotton swab, she cleans off some dirt from the pores. She says if an artifact is dry, it should stay dry, and if it is moist, keep it moist.
We get a variety of materials coming from the site. It's mainly bone, antler, some ivory. We also get wood, baleen, and a lot of stone tools and that kind of thing. Now, different things are treated differently. The stone are very usually very sturdy materials, so they are separated from everything else and kept together because they're heavy and very sound. Bone and antler are generally found in fairly good condition, except for when they're in the upper layers, when there's a lot of fluctuation in temperature, there's freezing and thawing, and a lot of damage occurs in those levels. The deeper down you go into the permafrost, the sounder the artifacts are, and they require less treatment or less conservation than other materials, more degraded pieces.
These artifacts are just part of the 3,000 pieces that have been found. They are well preserved and should last another 700 years.
Excess moisture just blot it off the surface of the artifact.
Chuck Arnold sat with a few elders and identified some artifacts that were commonly used.
We've got some of the artifacts here that we've dug up from Gupuk. Now we think these are all about 700 years old, and we're going to just show them around and maybe get some ideas from you folks as to what you think they are. It's hard for us to tell sometimes what the artifacts were used for because we've never done a lot of the things like working hides or making dry fish.
This is mama walk. They call it mama walk into the spear. Okay.
Not much difference, eh? 700 years.
Different, exactly.
Most of the artifacts that were found were made up of whalebone, stone, ivory, and antlers. This is a stone ulu, or knife, made for a woman.
Taimani channel rotai namik tamaja inu sumik inu niya rotai nami napsuyak karatika aknan ulwa ingit rat uyak inu niya rotai tualo litajwa mik sumik sanayak say namik ingit rat nitarupa ulu.
This stone spearhead could have been used with a long pole for killing beached whales or other animals. Needles such as these were used by the woman for making clothes.
Kano ubagut inonia rotate inuit sibut liptana lugi utaj batakuyak ud ikaluk sin utaj
nakoya nai ilai su iula yung nani kripodun sanani ade
sawa silwa
Poju sana ni kau ni.
Ipoju itu biar.
Nak kena turun kau ni. Nak apa? Maybe hak samik tu.
Idlayut dah.
Iya.
Aknat. Angut idlu amitai mereka. Kipia yuit tu dah. Angut idlu aknat tok tat kip jauh dah juga. Dah kau ni tu al. Tat lalu ni ulap tak ah.
I think that's one of the nicest looking things we found here.
It's really fancy.
It is.
It's really fancy.
Like somebody was sorry they lost that.
Sunak daun na coba. Kami bangali colen ni kay mas. Ini cosa aku sumang. Sunak pami. Kuya mo na. Yan. Kuya na.
Kuya ulun. Kuya lut. Ya, kuya ada.
Ya, kuya utol.
Ya, nabik si manak dokter ya nuk.
Uban putuan dokter umiak so kuya di yung nan.
Ya.
Aku nak ngomong dia jawab makan ni kan.
Kuya ulun ni tak kuya lut. Uyak tu tahu ngit kami.
Iya, ukumay
Kuya
pala.
kau dah.
Iya, kuya.
Ya. What had what in your mind?
Oh, I thought it might be a wedge or something.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's what we thought.
Huh? Or splitting planks, maybe?
Yeah.
There's some wood.
Yeah.
Well,
The point of it is break up. Huh?
yeah. Yeah. Because in the houses that we're finding,
You did it too much.
finding that the floors sometimes are made out of logs that have been split into planks. So
Yeah.
maybe something like this could be used for it.
Yeah.
I guess that must be from a bowhead whale, big whale.
Yeah, yeah. It's heavy, you know.
Solid,
It's solid, eh?
Yeah.
Kuya nine.
Oh, I can't say that. Koya Naini?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Koya
Yeah.
Naini. Koya Naini.
Yeah. I like the
One
fun.
word by one word, one day.
Oh, okay.
This group of workers were excavating a midden where most of the bones from animals were compiled. This place was carefully worked over because of the amount of bones and artifacts.
Well, right back from where we're working, right up the hill a little bit, are the remains of 2 sod houses. And back up further, there are another maybe 4 more houses. And these houses were probably lived in year after year after year. Every fall after the beluga hunt, people would come back to this area. But before moving into the old houses, they'd probably sweep all the bones and other things that were on the floor out the door. And the stuff would come down the slope here and pile up right at the base of this hill. And so what we're looking at are bones and broken tools and bits of wood that have been swept out of the houses and have been piling up here probably for maybe 100 or 200 years. So this is really one of the best sources of information for us because it tells us the kinds of tools people made, the kinds of animals that they hunted, and we find a lot of tools that were only partially made here as well. It shows us the kinds of techniques that they used to make their tools.
Well, we sift everything that comes through because we're always we're looking for the faunal remains, the animals that they consumed, and from the bones that we find here, we can get an idea of what the people were eating. And the other thing is that oftentimes with excavating, we sometimes miss artifacts that show up in the screen, and we can find something that might have slipped through us otherwise by sifting it through this screen.
What do you like about everything that's going on here?
Well, it's an adventure in a way. You know, we never know what we're going to find from one day to the next. There's always new information that's coming out, and we're always learning something new. Really, when you think about it, there's so little we know about the old ways, about the people that used to live here. And every day we're finding new bits and pieces that help us figure out the whole puzzle of what people were doing, what they were like, how they lived.
What do you do with all that mud after you're done?
We have to sift it with that sifter, eh? And pick up all the little bones that we missed or artifact.
It's put in a bucket, and then when the bucket is full, you take it over to the screen and you sift it. That way any small bones, any small artifacts that you might have missed will be found in the screen and nothing gets lost.
Okay.
So the artifacts, we measure those, each one individually. The animal bones, however, we only keep them from a 10 centimeter unit. We keep them all together. Okay, so very, very simple procedures, and just careful scraping away with the trowel and the brush, going down 10 centimeters, and then every artifact that you find gets mapped in at precise location. When you find an artifact, we also mark the location on a paper bag. I'll get one right now. But I've marked on the bag that I was working in the 30 to 40 centimeter level as first artifact from that level. And on the bag I give all the information about the area that I was digging. We call this site, we've given it a name, NITS1. That's a catalog number for the site. my initials, showing I was excavating. This whole area, Gupuk, we've divided up into 6 excavation areas. Over by our camp is area number 1, where these fellows are working on the midden is area 2. We're in area 3, and further down are areas 4, 5, and 6. So I marked site area number 3 on the bag. The excavation area in this square over here is 2 to 4 north, 4 to 6 east. You're going to be working from 0 to 2 north, 4 to 6 east. And then the location that the artifact was found, the environment that it was found in. Now in this case, finding most of these artifacts in a damp sand. This is important information for the conservator, especially when you get bone and ivory artifacts. She wants to know what the ground was like that they're found in, so she can devise her treatment accordingly. Then the object, in this case, I found a few flakes, just chips of stone, and the material then is stone, and the date. So all that information gets put on the bag, and we take the bags over to Rose, and she unpacks the artifacts and cleans them and treats them. The thing is that an artifact without the information is meaningless. We have to have the context, so it tells us something about the site. See, so